Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 233 of How I Built It, the podcast that offers actionable tech tips to small business owners. Now, in today's episode, I'm talking to Andy Cabasso about something that frustrates me endlessly, and that is backlink requests. They're frustrating and annoying because most people don't take the time to understand my business, but Andy says there's a better way. So he's going to tell us the right way to do backlink requests, podcast guest outreach, and so much more. Thanks to this week's sponsors, TextExpander and Nexus. You'll hear about them later in the show. We're going to talk about all of the show notes that you can find over at howibuilt.it/233. And if you are listening to build something more or you're interested, we're going to be talking about domain authority. That's for members only. So if you want to become a member to get ad-free extended episodes, early release, and so much more, you can head over to howibuilt.it/233. There'll be a link right there to join the club for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Okay, now let's get into the episode with Andy. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of How I Built It, the podcast that offers actionable tech tips for small business owners. My name's Joe Casabona. I'm your host. It's episode 233. And today, our guest is Andy Cabasso. He's the founder of Postaga. And I'm really excited because we've talked a couple of times about potentially getting you on the show. I'm excited to have you on the show now. The timing was good. And the topic is very interesting to me. It's about getting press coverage, blog mentions, and podcast guest spots with digital PR. Something that I can definitely use some work on. But I mean, I've been talking a lot already, so let's bring Andy in. Andy, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Joe. How about you?
I'm doing swell. Thanks so much for asking. I'm excited about this because back in November 2020, I hired Brittany Lynn. She of the Human Connections podcast and the Human Connections agency. And she helped me put together kind of a plan for outreach and things like that. And she was splendid. I could not recommend Brittany Lynn highly enough. But you know, now it's up to me to kind of implement this. And I was doing well for a while. And then like I feel like I'm being pulled in a lot of different directions for content and how to get on to other people's podcasts if I don't know them personally and things like that. So I'm excited to talk to you about this. Let's start at the beginning though. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, where to begin? Long story short, I come from a digital marketing background. I started, grew, and then sold a successful digital agency. And from some of the experiences that we had in building an agency, we built Postaga, which provides a platform to help you do outreach for link building and digital PR and sales to find the right relevant people, get their contact info, their email addresses, and then create personalized pitches for them. That's the 30-second summary of where I'm at.
Nice, very nice. And that digital agency, is that the one that you did with Sam Brody, former guest and friend of the show? I'll link that in the show notes. You'll be able to find everything we talk about in the show notes over at howibuilt.it/233. So you mentioned a couple of things already that I'm excited to dig into. The first is link building. I recently joined a like backlinks circle. I don't know what to call it. But it's like a group of us. There's like a person at the center of it who places backlinks strategically. Not like link farms. Like if you were around the web in like 2000, you had like the forums and the pages and link farms, and Nuke PHP, I think, was the forum everybody was using. And so you just had all these backlinks, but Google's wised up to that.
Yeah, that doesn't work anymore. Just like having words stuffed onto a page don't work anymore. Having things hidden in clear text doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
We have to be smarter now about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we could talk about that in the post show, kind of the history of trying to fool Google. But so I'm part of like a program where it's actually like relevant linked text, right? That's, I think, probably the important part of link building here. So I want to talk about that for sure. And then the other thing is, like you said, find the appropriate contact information and send personalized pitches. This is what I try to do for my guests, right? And it's mostly automated with an Airtable, but then there's a field for personal note where all the same details are filled in. And then I say like, and I loved your episode or whatever, or your blog is blah, blah. So how important is a personalized pitch in these situations?
Sure. So as I'm sure you probably personally are on the receiving end of a lot of unsolicited pitches from random people to be a guest on your podcast, I think it's important for people doing the outreach to recognize that bloggers and podcasters and media are getting pitched every day by tons of people, a lot of whom are not spending a good amount of time to ensure that their pitches are personalized. And so if you're on the receiving end of that and you open an email and you're like, the email says, "Hello, I would love to be a guest on your podcast," or "I have a perfect piece of content that would be a great fit for your article." Like that email is going either to get deleted or spam folder, or they're just seeing the email preview and they're like, all right, gonna forget this. So it's incredibly important to personalize so that you can, like, one, demonstrate that you've done the research to show the person who's on the receiving end that you know who they are and that what you're about to share with them is relevant for them. That's probably the biggest thing. And that really helps with getting your open rates higher and your response rates higher. Especially because the worse your emails perform, the less, like, if your emails don't reach the destinations, if they bounce because you haven't found the right person's email address and you have low deliverability, it's going to make it more likely that your emails end up in spam folders, which is no good and no one wants.
Yeah, for sure. And that's happened to me a few times where people are like, "Hey, did you see my email?" And I'm like, "No, it went to spam." So absolutely. And like, on top of demonstrating you did the research, first of all, I get, a lot of the generic, "Hey, here's like 4 paragraphs on why my guest is the greatest person to ever live and why you should interview him." And I was like, and I'm just thinking, what is in it for my audience? That's perhaps the number one question that you need to answer. Why should I have your person on my podcast? I don't want to hear that they graduated from Harvard with a 4.0. Lots of people, Harvard is exclusively smart people. So, like, what makes you unique, I guess?
What I found in particular, I've seen a lot of pitches sent by PR agencies, and some of them baffle me the most because some of them follow a particular specific format that, if I were on the receiving end of that, I would not be interested in it at all. Like, to share specifically, I'm happy to share like a pitch that has worked very well for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of just breaking it down line by line. So typically when I'm prospecting, when I find, let's say I found a relevant podcast and it's in the same industry as that I'm trying to connect with, or like it reaches the audience that I'm trying to reach. So great, I found that podcast, it's relevant. I have found the host of the podcast or a producer. I found their contact information. I got their email address. Here is what I'm going to say to them in that email, the first email. "Hey, insert person's first name. I was recommended your podcast and I have a few episodes queued up. I'm excited to check it out. I wanted to see if you are recording episodes or looking for guests in the next month. If so, I'd love to be a guest. Here are some ideas I have for an episode." And then insert relevant topics for episodes. And then following that, here's why I think I would be a great guest. And then insert relevant information on why I would be a great guest specific to that audience. Also, if you have your own podcast as well, I try and insert a line offering some reciprocation. Like, also, I have a podcast related to this audience. I would love to do a podcast swap, maybe have you on as a guest as well. Let me know what you think. And that's it. And that's like, it's a very simple pitch. Like, first demonstrate like being upfront. I would like to be a guest. Here's what I want to talk about that is relevant to your industry. Here is why I would be a good guest. And if you have something reciprocal to offer as well, adding that in. And that gets a very good response rate. I've personally been on 24 podcasts in the last year or so, and I do not have a podcast.
Yeah, wow, and it makes sense. First of all, if you are listening and you're like, wow, he just hit a lot of things, I'm going to have to listen to this again. We have
let's take it line by line.
Yeah, we have transcripts, so you can go read the transcript to get kind of all the main points Andy hit there. And I think that's really important because, again, you talked about the benefits. If in my own experience, right, Brittany and her team set me up with kind of 3 different pitches based on the topic I was pitching, which was based on the audience of the podcast I was pitching. So for one of my pitches was building online courses. I'm not going to pitch that to like a restaurant podcast or whatever, right?
Yeah.
For the restaurant podcast, I'm pitching why your website needs to be good. Like, why is every restaurant website crappy? And that's helpful, right? So, you need to show the benefit to the host, to the audience, and the reciprocity thing is really good. I'm just going to add too that podcasters are more likely to have other podcasters on because they know what to do. And that's not like a dig or anything at people who don't have podcasts, but I recently, well, Andy, you filled out my form, right? So you know that I have this disclaimer. I'll use a good mic. Yeah. I'll use headphones.
Yeah, and most every podcast I am on has similar, if not similar, disclaimers saying, please make sure you have a good mic. Make sure that you have wired internet if possible. That you are free in an area free from distraction. And so usually like something like, please have listened to an episode of my podcast actually before we come on, so that you kind of have a sense of what this is about. Because if you're doing cold outreach, or if you're reaching out through an agency, I'm maybe a little concerned that you are just going in this blind and don't know the audience of this podcast in particular. Right.
And, and I actually recently on our pre-record call, right? So Andy and I talked for about 15 minutes before we hit the record button here, where I go through a checklist. And, well, I turned my first person ever away at that point. And I'll tell that story and build something more. So stick around to the end and I'll tell that story. I don't want to like name shame or give enough details that they know who I'm talking about, but I mean, it's really important. And so having a podcaster or somebody who reads instructions is super important. Okay, so the pitch is really important. I think when you pitched this idea in particular, the get press coverage and blog mentions was what struck me the most, because I put out a lot of content. I put out a podcast on Mondays, a YouTube video, a live stream, and a blog post, one a week, every week, for all 4 of those things. And I know content is the long game, but I'd like to shorten the game a little bit, right? I'd like to try to get more different eyeballs on my content. So when you pitched this topic, I thought it was super, super interesting. So maybe we can just start with the basic question.
Sure.
If I write good content, will people just come to it?
if you already have an audience, maybe. But if you're starting from scratch, probably not. You can try and grow your audience organically, but depending on your market, everything is very, very competitive now. Like, it's just gotten more competitive over time. I know plenty of people who were having businesses in the early days of the internet, and they would talk about how they would just publish something or create a page and they would get customers and it would be great. Like, my agency used to be in the market that I had before, was in the market of doing web design for law firms. And I would talk to some lawyers who were like, I had a website in 1998 and it was great because I was the only person in my city who had a website for his law firm in 1998. And I got clients from it and they paid me so much money and it was great. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. But, now everyone's caught up to you. And like everyone else is seeing the value that those customers and that traffic is bringing. So now you have to really step it up if you haven't yet. So so when you create content, I try and spend as much time promoting my content as I do actually writing it, which maybe sounds crazy, but like if the goal here is to get more eyeballs in the content and help it make it so that the content ranks well in Google and makes it so my website ranks in Google, I have to outcompete everyone else writing on that topic. And what we've seen is that of all the hundreds of ranking factors that Google has, one that has an exceptionally high correlation with your search ranking is the quality and quantity of links to your website and to your content. So the more authoritative websites that link to your blog posts, that link to your website and your content, the better it's going to rank in Google, the better it's going to show up, and ultimately the more traffic and customers that you can drive to your site. So given that it's important to be able to get links, we have to spend time and invest that time in finding relevant websites that can link to our content and reach out to them. There are a lot of different strategies that people do to get links to their content, and I can talk about a few different ones. But probably the one that gets the most name recognition is the skyscraper technique. That was pioneered by Brian Dean from Backlinks. Basically, what it entails is real quick summary of it is you want to rank for a particular search term. You see what articles are ranking already on that term and who is linking to them. So you can use a tool like Ahrefs or SEMrush or Ubersuggest, and you can see the backlink profiles of these top ranking articles. So let's say I want to write an article on social media strategies, and I see all right, here's the top ranked article. They have links from 500 websites. I'm going to write a better article than that top ranked article. And then I'm going to, using that research tool, that Ahrefs, that SEMrush or Ubersuggest, I can extract the backlink profiles of that site and then find contacts at all of those websites and kind of pitch those sites to say, hey, I saw that you linked to this article, you have a really great article on this topic. I saw that you linked to this article on social media. I wanted to give you a heads up that that article is out of date. I've written a much better article on that topic that is more thorough, better, and basically pitch those websites to link to your article instead. That's the ultimate goal of the skyscraper technique.
This episode is brought to you by Nexus. Look, I know what it's like to spend too much time managing your website instead of your business. In fact, the previous host for this very show made it harder for me to focus on creating content because I was always trying to fix some problem with my website, especially on new episode days. And that's why I switched to Nexus. With Nexus's managed WordPress hosting, I don't have any problems to fix because Nexus fixes them for me, usually before I even know about them. I don't need to worry about my site going down on new episode days, or updates, or backups. I don't even need to worry about plugin vulnerabilities. Nexus has me covered. That's why I can be so consistent. And now they have membership sites with WP Quick Start. A membership site, especially if you're a creator or small business owner like me, can be a fantastic way to increase revenue. But there are too many moving parts for most people who just want to set something up and start making money. Membership sites with WP Quick Start does it all for you. That is great hosting. So check out Nexus today if you want a website and not a project. For a limited time, you can get 50% off your first 6 months. Just go to howibuilt.it/Nexus, Nexcess. That's howibuilt.it/Nexus for 50% off your first 6 months. Thanks so much for Nexus for being a sponsor of How I Built It. I do want to give a quick rundown of link backs, right? Because link backs in Google as a ranking factor has been around as long as Google itself, right? This has always been the linchpin of how Google figures out what good content is out there. And the way I would explain it to my students when I taught kind of an intro to computer course in the classroom was, if you need a mechanic, are you just going to open the yellow pages and pick the first number you find? Or are you going to ask your dad or your mom or your friend who they recommend and go to them? That's essentially what a backlink is doing. It's a personal recommendation to this specific content.
That's exactly right. And like in the earliest days of search engines, it didn't used to be that Google was the only one out there. There was Yahoo and Dogpile and Excite and all these other search engines where they would manually curate the search results basically, and that wasn't really very scalable. So Google figures out, how do we shortcut this? Well, let's create our algorithm, and in it we'll place more emphasis and value on the amount, on the quality and quantity of links to a particular page, because that kind of tells us that page is authoritative on the subject matter. So if everyone's linking to this article on this topic, it's probably the most relevant one.
Right. It's the difference between, because this is, you mentioned keyword stuffing, right? Mm-hmm. The way Yahoo used to work is if I wanted a website about dogs, Yahoo would just be like, this web page has the word dog the most. Yeah. So it's kind of the difference between me saying I am the expert here and other people saying Joe is the expert here or Andy is the expert here. So let me ask you, because I do get these backlink pitches a lot.
Sure.
A tip for anybody listening: I'm not going to add them to How I Built It, any website on How I Built It. I've got sponsors who pay for those links. The links are relevant to what we mentioned. If you find something on casabona.org that you want me to link back to, I would be more open to it. But I get again, pretty bad pitches. Somebody asked me to link to a page I wrote, a blog post I wrote in 2006. That was 2 sentences about how excited I was about Halo coming out. And I was just like, are you only asking to link back here because the page is so old? They did not respond. But, I think, again, what's the value proposition here, right? It's, on the surface, it's, I'm going to give my readers more relevant information. Does me linking back, how has my website helped here, though, in general?
Sure. So I guess from the perspective of the person who's pitching you, right? They want you to link to them because you link to them is going to be more valuable for them. For them in their pitch, they really need to demonstrate some value for you and for your audience. And usually the standard go-to is, the content that you're linking to is is very out of date. You should link to my content instead. But there are a few different pitches and that I'll get into in a sec. But with like the skyscraper technique in particular, the pitch is typically to the effect of you're like the information that you're sharing to people, like your existing audience is outdated, so you should update your article, and then by you updating your article, you're providing some fresh material for your audience. Now,
and just to interrupt you here, this is kind of based on, hey, you like this thing that you are linking to.
Mm-hmm.
I figured out that you are linking to it, and I want to give you something more relevant.
That's right.
You have demonstrated that you want to share this resource with your audience.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like, hey, I see you write about LMSs here, link to my LMS.
Right. And that is another approach as well. But but yeah, with a good pitch for a skyscraper technique that I've like seen more effective is there is some element of reciprocity to it. So if you're a blog on the receiving end, of these kinds of pitches, you've probably gotten a lot of these pitches. The ones that stand out, I guess, first, they demonstrate relevance, that like they know who they're reaching out to. Like they demonstrate, all right, so you know our article, you know what we're linking to, so you've done some basic research there. Second, maybe you have something to offer further for our audience. Like I've seen some pitches where, as an example, a web hosting company was doing a skyscraper technique, and in their pitch, they offer like an affiliate account or a free account at their site in exchange for that backlink. And that can make the recipient more open to that. It's like, all right, it's not just for me, like give me that link, thank you. It's like they're providing some additional level of value there too. That's kind of with the skyscraper technique.
Yeah. Let me ask then, my yearly theme, I'll link to the yearly theme episode in the show notes too. My yearly theme is the year of opportunity. By just discarding any requests for link backs, am I potentially leaving money or good opportunities on the table? Like, have I looked at this the wrong way, where I think it's a purely selfish act on by the requester?
Well, I will say that sometimes the content that people are providing you is going to be more relevant and more helpful to your audience. But from your perspective, you're probably like, well, then I have to go onto my website and swap out a link, and that's going to take time and effort on my part. I will say that having sent out lots of link request pitches, I've seen a lot of websites where they will send back like a template email saying, what you're looking for is a sponsorship opportunity. I've
sent that very same email, and especially on how I built it. Like I don't do this, but yeah,
sure. And it's like, all right, getting a link insertion is going to be anywhere from $50 to $500, depending on what our domain rating is and how relevant our website is to your audience. We also have other opportunities for things like guest blog posts. And if you want to provide some additional value to our audience, maybe you can write an article specifically for our audience, and we'll get you a link in there. But you're going to be providing some brand new content that's good quality and relevant for our audience. So that's a win-win for everybody.
Gotcha.
So that's something else there too.
Cool.
But also sometimes you might want to, like, more experienced link builders can be wary of websites that have a template-y response for like paid link insertions, because there are some sites where that's a big part of their business model, and so like they just insert tons of links from every website that'll reach out to them, and it might be of varying quality, but if you're linking out to thousands or tens of thousands of other websites out just because they're paying you, it might not be the best quality link.
Right.
But that's a more in-depth thing to get into in terms of like evaluating opportunities.
I mean, that essentially you're turning your website into a link farm, right? Where kind of reminds me of that episode of How I Met Your Mother, where Marshall, like his recommendations, he was a stamp tramp,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, where his recommendations weren't good because he just basically recommended anybody that he was nice to. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to the actionable advice. Let's get to the actionable advice. You've already given us really good some really good background for how to pitch and how to make it relevant and highlight the benefit for the content creator. If I wanted to start today with kind of getting a little bit more coverage and link backs, what should I do? What are the maybe the first 2 or 3 steps I should take?
The first thing I would do is I would inventory my content, figure out like what's the best content, like in particular, like because from the perspective of the recipient, you want to make sure that the content that you're going to be linking to is very good quality. And I'm sure you've gotten pitches, and plenty of people who get pitches see like people saying like, hey, can you link to my article? And the article isn't very good or isn't very thorough. So you want to make sure that you're pitching your top quality stuff. In particular, like the longer your content is, the more thorough it is, the better. And kind of take stock of all of that. So there are different strategies that we do for prospecting. So I mentioned the skyscraper technique as one type of strategy, but there are others, like for example, like link roundup outreach, which I only do based on like certain industries. So like a link roundup being an article where like on a weekly or monthly basis, someone posts a blog post, like here are the latest articles in X topic. And that's basically an article that's a collection of links to other people's articles. It's like very common in spaces like digital marketing and SEO and web design, but maybe not the most common in more niche areas. So if there are not really people publishing link roundup articles in your space, then there's nothing you can do there. But like if you are finding people who are doing link roundups in your space, that can be great because in particular, those blogs are actively looking for content every day, every week. And if you can provide them with something that's really good quality, they're going to publish, they're going to link to your article, and you've now built a relationship with them after that first interaction, and you can follow up and in the future send more articles their way. So you're not just reaching out to a stranger anymore. It's someone who trusts you and your content.
Yeah, real quick, I want to reinforce that point, right? Because it's the same thing with podcast guest pitches. Generally, I will have everybody who pitches me fill out this form that again goes to Airtable, and then I either accept or reject, and they get an email based on that. But there are a couple of people who can just go around the form. I implicitly trust the people that they are recommending because they understand my show so well, and they have a track record of recommending like 3, 4, 5 really good guests. So forming that relationship, I think, is really important. And quick follow-up, I hope I didn't throw you off your game now, but if you do, let's say for the link roundup specifically, right? Because I was doing link roundups for a while. Or even for a WP review for my other podcast, I do the link roundups. If you get in as a link there, is it more likely that that you might not have to ask for links in the future? Like, WP Owls is a good example. Like I found one really good place that they linked from, and now I check them weekly to see what news is happening.
Yeah. So if you're the one like publishing, chances are if there are people that you're adding content from regularly, you're probably going to be subscribing to their newsletters and seeing what they're publishing. And so those are going to be some of the go-to sources for you for the future.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. So inventory your content, look at what's best because you want to pitch your top quality stuff. Generally longer, in depth is better. I'm glad you said that. My blog posts are generally short and cover a specific topic, but like I guess is short like 400 words or is short like 1,200 words? Is long like 5,000 words?
so like short content can be like 300 to 500 words. And in general, I wouldn't discourage promoting that content if in that space you have something very specific, actionable, and relevant to share, and like that would be a good fit for some other articles. But the articles that I try and promote are generally like 1,500 plus words. The longer the better, because if someone's going to click a link and look at the article, they're going to see, okay, there's a table of contents here, so there's a lot to it. I've seen so many pitches, and the ones that are the least successful I find are the ones that don't have a good grasp of like the quality of their content, in that they're like just, hey, here's my article, and it's like, this article isn't good.
Yeah. Gotcha. So quality definitely matters more than word count.
Or like, pitching like an article that's the same article like on a topic that's been written about hundreds, thousands of times, like why you need a mobile responsive website. Mm-hmm. We've all seen that article. We've all written that article. So the content that you have hopefully has some new take or approach, something maybe more data focused and a lot more to add than what else is out there. Gotcha.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? It's the difference between, another example maybe is what microphone should I have for my podcast, right? Lots of people are answering that question versus I did like a launch your podcast for $100 or less, right? Mm-hmm. That's more specific. There's a spin on it. And it's not, at least when I wrote it, I didn't see a whole lot like that.
Yeah. So there are, definitely like with your content, thinking about like the approaches that you want to take, the ways to make it stand out. And like one thing I like to do is like before I start writing, like take a look at the top 5 or 10 articles on a given topic. See what they're doing well, see what the gaps are, so that you can fill those gaps and add more to it that they've missed. Like, it could be relatively easy to see like, all right, let's say, take an example of social media again. There are a dozen articles on 10 social media trends for the year or whatever. Well, you can curate all of those, let's say, and now you've got 30, 50 trends, and you've included all of them in your mega article. It takes all of that into consideration.
This episode is brought to you by TextExpander. In our fast-paced world, things change constantly, and errors in messaging often have significant consequences. With TextExpander, you can save time by converting any text you type into a keyboard shortcut called a snippet. Say goodbye to repetitive text entry, spelling, and message errors, and trying to remember the right thing to say. When you use TextExpander, you can say the right thing in just a few keystrokes. TextExpander lets you make new approved messaging available to every team member instantly with just a few keystrokes, ensuring your team remains consistent, current, and accurate. TextExpander can also be used in any platform, any app, and anywhere you type. So take back your time and increase your productivity. But that's not all it does. With its advanced snippets, you can create fill-ins, pop-up fields, and more. You can even use JavaScript or AppleScript. I can type out full instructions for my podcast editor, hi Joel, in just a few keystrokes. Another one of my favorite and most used snippets is PPT. This will take whatever text I have on my clipboard and convert it into plain text. No more fighting formatting if I'm copying from Word or any place else. Last month, I saved over 2 hours in typing alone. That doesn't even take into the account the time I saved by not having to search for the right link, text, address, or number. You have no idea how many times I want to type out a link to a blog post or an affiliate link and I can't remember it and then I have to go searching for it. That generally takes minutes, but since I have a TextExpander snippet, it takes seconds. TextExpander is available on macOS, Windows, Chrome, iPhone, and iPad. I've been using it a lot more on my iPhone lately because I've been working from my iPhone more, because there are days when I'm just not in front of my computer right now. If you've been curious about trying TextExpander or simple automation in general, now's the time. Listeners can get 20% off their first year. Just visit textexpander.com/podcast and let them know that I sent you. Thanks so much to TextExpander for sponsoring the show, and now let's get back to it. That reminds me of, I was helping somebody with an article they were doing about, not helping them, but, they asked for some advice, and it was like best SEO WordPress themes. And, I did a quick Google search. I found like 5 articles, and Divi was at the top of all of them. I think Astra, one just kind of listed StudioPress themes. And I was like, you know what? Cadence is a theme I've been using a lot, that is fast and well made. That's not on any of these. I was like, maybe recommend that one. Hopefully that article publishes before this episode comes out, I guess. I reckon it will. But I think that's a really good point, right? Fill in the gaps, answer the questions that aren't being answered. We are coming up on time. I know you were going through a couple of different types of techniques. If you want to finish that up. Yeah.
So other things like I call it like resource outreach. So I like to search for those articles that are number let's say like I said before, 50 social media trends for the year or something like that, or social media tools or social media resources. Like number followed by the topic followed by resources. You can see those articles generally link to other people's articles. So what we can do is we can reach out to them and say, hey, I really liked your article about social media resources. I've written an article specifically on social media something. I think you can add, if you'd add my article to your list, it would be a great addition to your resource page. That kind of thing to offer is a similar approach and pitch as the link roundup kind of articles, in that that article is seeking content, and by you providing that is an easy thing for them to add to provide additional value for their audience, and a way to say update that page. The last one, in terms of blog post promotion that I'm thinking about is I call it mention outreach. So whenever I have an article, I will in my article link to other people's websites when it's relevant in relevant contexts. You can then reach out to those websites to say, hey, I really liked your article. I mentioned it in my article. It would be great if you could either link to it or another article of mine, or share my article. I'm helping you out kind of situation. Something I've already done something, so offer that and get some reciprocation out of that.
Yeah. Interesting. That is also, that one has also happened to me. Hey, I'm linking to your podcast here. And I'm like, thanks. And they're do you want to link to this? And I'm like, no. But I mean, again, if your pitch is honed properly, maybe if they said, hey, I linked to this because I really liked this episode of the podcast. I saw you talked about why authors should start a podcast. Here's a list of author podcasts. Maybe you could link to that. Then maybe I'd be more receptive, because I'd be like, yeah, I actually need better examples because I'm an author and that's the only example I use, right? But I think I really like these techniques. I'm going to be more open to it, and I'm probably going to try some of them, right? Because especially I follow HubSpot, and every single thing they post is 50 plugins that help you with SEO. And I'm like, all right. But they must work. They must. That's the only content they put out. Gosh, this has been so great. I've learned a lot here. So I know that we've been talking for about an hour now.
Oh, I have one last thing to recommend, actually. So if anyone in the audience has a business where it's a product, whether it's an app a WordPress plugin theme or anything like that, whatever it is. One type of outreach that I recommend for like getting press coverage is basically doing outreach to get reviews by professional bloggers and other websites for your product. So what I would do is I would see like, let's say you make a CRM, for example, and there's HubSpot. You can search for HubSpot reviews, let's say, or Salesforce reviews, and you can see who's writing reviews of these competitors in your industry, or if not competitors, search for complementary or other related products in your space, find who's writing reviews about those, and then reach out to them with a pitch of, hey, I saw you did this great review of this product. I wanted to see if, since your audience is interested in CRMs, if you'd be interested in checking out my app or my product, I'd be happy to give you free access. Let me know what you think.
Yeah.
And that can be a way to get free press coverage on other blogs. And I've had a lot of success with that as well. Just making sure that your pitch, of course, is relevant to those bloggers and websites.
Yeah, that is the one that's been super effective on me. Millinote, for example, was like, hey, can you link us? Like, can you link to us from your users page? And I'm like, I need to use it. And they're like, we'll give you like a free forever account. And I'm like, all right, I'll give it a go. And I loved it. So yeah, they made it on. That is really effective, right? And it's just sometimes hard because I do like paid video reviews on my YouTube channel, and then there are people who are like, hey, I'll give you like my product for free if you review it on YouTube. And I need to as a content creator, you got to walk the line, right? Mm-hmm. If it's something maybe I would have reviewed otherwise, then maybe I'm more likely to do it for free or for a free account. But if it's like something that is not even on my radar, at that point, it's like, if you want a paid placed review, then I'm willing to do that. So that's
sure.
That's a story for another episode. Andy, this has been great. I need to ask you my favorite question, which is, do you have any trade secrets for us?
Yes, I got plenty. So where do I begin? So first, one thing that's important to do is, like, if you're doing outreach, we want to protect your main sending domain. So like, don't send from casabona.org or whatever your main email address is from. So we set up either like an alternate domain or like a subdomain to send from, although I'm not anticipating that you're going to end up in spam or anything like that, we want to protect your main account just in case. Smart. Because if you do get blacklisted and banned, that is not an easy thing to undo. There are companies that maintain like blacklists, and if your domain ends up on it, then anytime you send a regular email to someone's email account or Gmail or anything like that, your emails can end up in spam. So that's no good. Aside from that, one other thing that I do with my emails, and it's important to do, is like, it's called warming up your sending domains. So instead of going from like 0 emails to 100 emails in a day, which to mail servers will look suspicious, we send out a few emails a day and slowly ramp that up over time to look more natural. And also, this is a big one, don't use software like MailChimp for sending outreach emails from. MailChimp was not and marketing automation software was not meant for that. And you will most likely get banned from those platforms very quickly. I've seen that happen to people as well. You really want to use an email sending platform, whether it's Postaga or anything else, that's specifically meant for cold outreach, something that is going to not send out 100 emails at once, which is going to look like an email blast, but send out emails staggered over time that looks like a more normal, natural cadence that human beings use, which will be much more likely that your emails end up in people's inboxes rather than spam folders. Like, that's a hugely important thing. Another trade secret is in terms of expectations. Outreach is a numbers game. You can for sending like outreach pitches for like for skyscraper technique, you can be doing very well and get like a 5% response rate. Now that's 5 good responses out of 100. So for that in particular, you're going to need to send out a lot of emails to a lot of different people to get the quantity of links that you're looking for. For like my most successful outreach is for me, like doing outreach for podcasts. I personally get about a 20% response rate.
Wow.
So that's only 1 in 5. So I need to find a lot of people to reach out to get the numbers that I'm wanting to get. And of the responses that you'll get, they're going to vary. Some people will say no thanks or unsubscribe me. Some of them will demand payment and say, if you want a link, that's going to be somewhere between $50 to $500. And that's going to vary by a lot of factors. And it's not necessarily that you should avoid paid link insertions or sponsorship opportunities. I know some people just won't, but other people are take an approach of it of like, as long as this website is legit and like it's a good relevant opportunity, me getting this link is going to help me rank quicker. So maybe it is worth it. So that's something to think about as well. I'm not going to tell you whether or not to take paid opportunities, but if you were to, I would only do it from like actual relevant outreach to relevant websites, as opposed to like paying for backlinks on Fiverr or Upwork, which I would absolutely never recommend, because you're going to get a lot of bad quality stuff. Like I would, like someone is going like
anyone who's productizing backlinking does not have your best interest in mind. Yeah.
All right. I mean, those are my trade secrets.
I think those are really good. And so this is super relevant to a podcast. I just listened to a podcast episode of the Deliverability podcast by Alyssa and Melissa over at ConvertKit. This has become like my favorite podcast because I'm learning a ton. But they mention how your main domain needs to kind of gain authority first. And so everything you said jives with the general advice they gave. So I'll make sure to link that in the show notes. But this was really, really good. Really good advice. Andy, we're going to continue the conversation for a few minutes and build something more. But if people want to learn more about you, where can they go?
Sure. My website is postaga.com. That's postaga.com. We also have a Facebook group dedicated to outreach and digital marketing called Grow Together SEO. You could find me on Twitter and Facebook at Andy Cabasso. And on LinkedIn, I'm Andrew Cabasso. Maybe it sounds a bit more professional. I don't know. But it is what it is.
Awesome. Well, I will link to all of that and more in the show notes over at howibuilt.it/233. If you want to get the the pre-show, I should say, where Andy and I talked about live stream recording, video, smart home setup, and you want to get the post-show where we're going to talk about old SEO techniques, and I'm going to ask him if HubSpot is an actual good blog. You can sign up over at buildsomething.club for $5 a month or $50 a year. You'll get the ad-free extended version of this podcast, as well as lots of other extra content. But until next time, Andy, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. This has been fun.
And thank you to everybody listening. Thanks to our sponsors. And until next time, get out there and build something.